final question would just be, do you have any questions for me before we start?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, and then I think actually I skipped one there. Let's say like the past 2 weeks or so, how often have you been playing the game?
I'd play maybe 3 nights a week for sort of 2 to 3 hours, something like that.
Okay. So keep in mind so keep in mind that's why I asked the question is just to gauge how often people are playing. So in comparison to people who play like on a daily basis, right? You're not going to be outputting as much time, which just means less practice. So just keep in mind that sometimes that can be one of the biggest hindrances to climbing is the inability to practice and keep up regularly, because those 3 nights a week that you play could be just keeping from getting rusty, and that kind of leads to stagnation. You never really get better. So that is something I just keep your eye out for. Now, of course, don't prioritize it over other things if you don't want to prioritize it over other things. It's just more like you have to be aware that less time into something means less getting better at said thing, right? So same
Mm.
thing if you're picking up an instrument or trying to do anything else with it. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you want to get better, one of the best things you could ever do to get better is to put more time in, unless you're going like excess overboard with it. But putting more time in means more practice, more time to get better. So that's something to
Mm.
consider. Besides that, let's just go ahead and get started, and I'll be a minute or so while I'm looking for something to talk about.
One. Round one. Capture the objective.
All right. So typically recommend just always charging the longest distance you can to get to the fight, right? So what this does for you, so
One.
first off, I probably
Ready or
charge runs you get like around this corner. So like right here we would charge, that way we can just cover this distance like really fast. This opens us up for just a really good fire strike angle, puts us ahead of our team as we are the main tank, so we want to be ahead of our team, and then just puts us in better positioning really fast. Whereas here, just notice our entire team is able to get ahead of us, right? And us as the Reinhardt, the main tank, end up being behind our whole team. We miss out on an early fire strike, which can cost us like, just some ult charge at the very beginning. So just usually it's a good idea most points to just charge out, get there soon.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, sometimes I find I'm charging out and then end up in front of the,
Mm.
like too far in front of the team and then
Yeah, in that case,
get
if
wrecked.
you have to be careful about it, right? If you're charging into the fight, that's a little bit different than charging to, into safety. So, if you're
Oh.
charging into a safe position, then that's completely fine. That's what you should be doing. But if you're charging into the fray, that might be a little bit different, as well as the fact of make sure you're not charging in without teammates if you don't have teammates with you, right? Okay, so this charge, for example, right, puts us in the middle of their entire team, right? And yes, gets a kill out of it, but it pretty much guarantees that we die, right? There's like absolutely no chance here that we live, right? It's a guaranteed death. I can press play and then just boom, okay, we're dead. So that charge, the problem with it is that we're not thinking about our destination of where we're going. We're thinking, I'm going to get the kill, but then we're not thinking about the outcome of it, right? Because going 1 for 1 is a very terrible decision, right? Getting one kill and then dying is never a good thing in Overwatch, unless you were like guaranteed to die anyways. But you want to get more than that, right? So in this situation, we don't want to suicide to get one kill. So when we're charging, for example, right? We want to make sure pinning into maybe something closer, right? Something that gives us more. That doesn't throw us into their team, and then also on top of that gets us out of the charge animation sooner, right? When we charge a long distance, right now we're probably like a medium range away from that wall in the back, right? That means that they have a ton of time to stun us, a ton of time to shoot at us, right? While we can't do anything about it, right? We're charging in a straight line, and it just makes it very easy for them to melt us, right? And then, like I said, this also puts us in the middle of their team. Now, let's think, for example, if we wanted to go for a charge here, right? Right, instead of curving to the right side on the May, what if we had, for example, maybe tried to charge? Because May here we would be probably Maybe if we had come in at like a left angle, we could have gotten to this wall, but we also could have just slid along this. I'm not sure if we would be able to pin into this or not. But in any case, we also maybe could have tried to charge the Reinhardt again, but more into something like this, where notice that this doesn't put us in the middle of their team if we do land this charge, and it also, if we do land the charge, doesn't. It's less time before we're getting out of the charge, right? Because it's a closer distance. So looking to charge someone into this would probably be a lot more effective than charging somebody into this. So just being careful of that, make sure we're not suiciding.
Yeah, I remember thinking the fight was lost. I don't know why I thought that now looking at this in the replay.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can go back to the replay and take a look. We come in here, we lose one person, right? So that's we're down a pick, down 2 picks. So like the fight at this point in time is looking very, very bad, right? That being down 2 people is a great disadvantage. But if we, for example, had landed the charge on the Reinhardt or the May and got that kill, right, and then stayed alive, that is now us only being down 1 person, which isn't a lost fight. So this safe charge opens up for the potential for a 1 fight. On top of that, you don't have to, because it's the first point, you still have another 12 seconds before anyone caps, right? I wouldn't say you have to rush into losing here, even if you're at a big disadvantage, right? So this is very close to the territory of like, yeah, it's a lost fight, but at the same time, there isn't a reason to just give it up when we could try to win it. So, yes, it's probably lost, but no, should we suicide anyways?
Don't worry, my friends. I am your shield.
Alright. No.
Activating.
The dragon becomes me.
On! Then all you have is a
Okay.
Everyone else is a nail.
Alright, so when it comes to shielding, you have specific things that you need to shield against, right? So when you shield, there's a bunch of them, right? When you shield, you can shield when you are low, when a teammate is low, right, to save your life. You can shield when you're blocking ultimates and abilities. You can shield to when you are pushing aggressively and when you are backing out and using it to cover that distances, right? And you can also shield when you know a ton of burst damage is coming in and you really needed to stay alive, right? So when somebody's in danger. So think, for example, if someone has slept on your team, or for example, if your team is grabbed and you know that even though, nobody's low HP at the moment, you need to hold up shield so that nobody ends up getting bursted down, right? So those are the times in which is needed. Shielding is not really needed when you're just soaking up random spam damage, right? When you're just, eating up shots that are probably not going to kill something, and if they look like they are going to kill something, you can shield. But here we just end up soaking a lot of damage that doesn't really particularly do anything, right? So we can look at, like, just go back a couple seconds and think, right, is this accomplishing anything for us to be soaking up like all this damage like right now? Okay, well, maybe we give our team like a couple extra seconds to shoot at them, but like, we could also just let them shoot at them without shielding, right? And then that means that we actually have shield for when the fight begins, and then we can melt their shield while they're pushing in. So here we kind of don't we just kind of hold up our shield and hold up our shield, and then that means by the time the fight actually begins, we don't have a shield, right? No shield at all. So that's shield management a little bit there. We got a little bit into it. Now let's also talk about positioning a little bit. Do thinking of how to explain this here. First off, why don't we just cover the very basic point of we are out in the open here. So with our positioning, right, we push up here, and we are just kind of holding a very out in the open position, right? So when we are positioning, good positioning is the usage of cover, whereas bad positioning is the absence of cover, right? So that means when we have something to use as cover, right, we can go like this, boop, now they can't see us, right, in half of a second. Whereas if we, for example, were standing right here, and now we're looking for cover, it's going to take us like 1-2 seconds to get beyond cover, right, which is 4 times slower. So that means that we end up dying in situations like that. So when it comes to cover, we want to make sure we're looking to use it, placing ourselves near it. There's cover all over the place, right? We have doorways and just using this corner. We have, again, corners. We have high grounds that act as cover. We have random pillars that are sitting around, random objects, right? Another pillar, another, big piece of cover, right? So it's all over the place. We just want to make sure we're looking to utilize it. So that's the first basic point, is we should be over here, right? When we are standing out in the open as a Reinhardt, that encourages our team to also stand out in the open. So let's see, does anybody actually push out in the open with us? Maybe a little bit, yeah, our team also just pushes out in the open with us, right? Like Diva and Genji do that too, right? So when we stand out in the open, that encourages our team to stand out in the open as well, which puts them as well in bad positioning, right? And then on top of that, when we hold on corners, right? When we hold and we hold up our shield, half of the shield, if it's in the wall, is not visible. And then because half of the shield is invisible, that actually means that it takes less damage because you can't shoot at as much of it. And then that's another way to keep it alive longer, is to hold on walls and then not let them see the whole shield. So here, make sure we're using cover. Now this also gets into another point, which, why don't we actually leave the game to go over this. Are you familiar with what no man's land is?
It's like the space between the two teams that you're.
Yeah, so no man's land would be any long stretch of open space where there's no cover at all, right? So we just discussed how good cover is, but when there's no cover, right, at all, then that's no man's land. So why don't we just do a demonstration of this, right? And
Traveling with your
figure out
item
how do we
bag.
hold a no man's land, right? So when we're holding
Just a
no man's land, so why don't we first get there, and then we can discuss what no man's land is here. Right. And then are you familiar with what a choke point is? So, for example here, right, choke point would be this tiny little funnel here, and then no man's land would be this long stretch of space where there's no cover at all, right? If I'm standing here, right, there's no cover near me that I can go behind, right? So therefore, it's very bad positioning, right? So in terms of holding this, right, let's think what happens if I hold up here in front of the choke, right? Well, if I hold up here in front of the choke, which I haven't seen us doing, right? That's not something we've done yet, right? But if we hold, it's the same concept, so I'm trying to get at it. So if we're holding up here in front of the choke, right? They don't have to walk through this bad positioning, which funnels them. And in fact, when we have to back up because they're pressuring us, well, now we have to walk backwards through that bad positioning. So we don't put them at the disadvantage, and we put ourselves at the disadvantage, right? Same thing if we hold in the middle of it, and sometimes even same thing if we hold right behind it. If the choke, sometimes choke points are thinner than others, right? Some choke points can be like a little bit longer, right? And some choke points can be like pretty small, right? I'd probably say this choke point you can't really hold right behind it, because if we're holding here, why would they need to walk through the choke point when they could just spam us from the other side, right? When they could just um, get rid of all of our resources and then push in, right? And then that means that we don't really get any value for holding like right here, right? Same thing with no man's land. If we are holding at the front, would be the front of no man's land, right? If we're holding here at the front of no man's land, well, now they don't have to push through no man's land, this really bad positioning where we can melt them down very easily. And in fact, we have to walk backwards through it. We have to walk this direction through it, right? When we're backing up. Same thing with like if we hold in the middle of it. Instead, what we want to be doing is probably holding at the end of it, right? So we would hold on the back side here on this corner, and then what that means is that our team can spam them for free while they're walking through the choke and then walking through the no man's land. And if they choose to go right side, we rotate right side, and now again this is another choke, right? And we can just melt them the whole time they're pushing in. And then we as Reinhardt, we wouldn't be just sitting here hard shielding. We'd probably be going for fire strikes, preserving our shield, swinging on on the corner, waiting for them to push, shielding if necessary, right? And then we would start shielding once the fight begins, right? When things pop up that we need it. So does that all make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go into like what
Welcome
I
to
saw within that
Ready
game.
for
So
Battle.
do.
Well,
So that means in this fight, like right around here, right, in terms of where are we holding,
area
right, we're holding
activated.
out in the open. So here, probably best place for us to be holding would probably be like on point, right? Because if they were to go right side, this allows us to contest them the best. This gives teammates who like high ground advantage, like for example McCree Mercy, right? We could be able to take high ground, whereas McCree contesting from all the way over here isn't going to do very much, right? On top of that, this also makes them walk through this long open no man's land, because right here, notice how there's not a whole lot of cover while they're trying to push in aggressively, right? Which means we can spam them the whole time, but instead we're holding in the middle of no man's land, right? Out in the open where there's no cover at all, right? So probably backing up to this corner be preferable here in terms of positioning.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be coming forward towards me, but he didn't, and that kind of confused me a bit, this guy.
Alright, so in this situation, the issue is that your whole the problem here, right, is that your whole team is shattered and they're unable to follow up with your shatter, right? So that means that like their Reinhardt's not going to get value, and our Reinhardt's not, and our Shatter is probably not going to get value. In this situation, I'd probably say that the safest option for you to go for would be to maybe go for like their Reinhardt instead of trying to pin into their team, right? Because us going for the Reinhardt secures the kill on Reinhardt, right? While also being closest to your team and giving you the greatest chance of staying alive. But yet again, notice how we're going straight into the middle of their team, right? Which is what you would call over aggression, getting too aggressive. So in this situation, I just take a look at this and go, wow, we'll, if we're being shot at by 3, 4 people, we're probably gonna die, right? That's just I think that's self-explanatory of in this situation, if we're in the middle of 4 people and don't have our team with us, that's a recipe for getting killed, right? So in general, you want to make sure that you're not putting yourself in that situation where you're in the middle of 4 people without your team with you, right? So here, make sure we're not charging into the middle of their team when we don't have any team follow-up on our end, right? And that therefore doesn't lead to us dying, right? I'd also make sure we're not trying to swing when there's a nanoed hog looking at us. This is a situation where we would be shielding and trying to back up away from him, right? We're not going to kill him. We're not going to get any value from trying to swing at him. And here, we also negate trying to shield when we're getting ulted at, right? So, shield, don't charge into their team. Go for the Reinhardt instead, because then their Reinhardt ends up living through because he never gets focused, or yeah, he never gets focused there, and then therefore he doesn't die, right? And then we end up dying and then losing out on value. Noticing how we've been, us dying there just puts our team at a disadvantage and leads to us the lost fight. And now here, I don't think he actually shoots at our shield, but like, there's no reason to hard shield a McCree when you're not protecting anybody, and this would just take damage to your shield when we could just go cover, right? Now he can't see us anymore, walk forwards. Once high noon's done, then we walk in, right? That sort of thing. Now, if, it's just kind of unnecessary. Okay, so here, right on us, just sitting on point behind us, right? We're also down a bunch of people. So as of the moment, right, it's a 2.5 versus a 4, right? So we're at a 1.5 player disadvantage, right? Which is a pretty big disadvantage. So probably don't want to be playing too aggressive. Want to make sure we're paying attention to where Ana is. I would probably be holding on your backside of point so that when teammates come back, which they're nowhere close to coming back, you would have them as soon as possible. And then you can also just stall out point as long as possible, right? But here we don't pay attention to where Ana is, right? So we have knowing that Anna's there, we see her shots. You can right above your head here, you can see her her hit scan shot, right? When you see the trail on it, right, that lets you know she's there. You can hear her shooting, right? You as well see that we take damage, and when we take damage, you see two different sources of where damage is coming from. Right underneath your crosshair, you can see the damage indicator from behind, and as well you can see underneath our screen, right on the very bottom, you can see the red markers again, indicating the direction in which damage is coming from. Therefore, we know somebody's shooting at us from the back, and it's Anna because we saw and heard her shots. So, therefore, probably want to not be getting aggressive and putting ourselves in easy sight lines of her, and instead looking to just back up a little bit and stall for time. Right, probably be the best thing there. But that was a lost fight anyway, so it's not a massive thing.
Coming up.
Okay. Again, notice how we're kind of wasting our entirety of our shield before we're getting aggressive, right? So in general, right, when it comes to aggression, you want to get aggressive and do things when you have, and on Reinhardt, right, when you have shields, when you have health, right? Because if you do not have shields and you try to get aggressive, what does that mean, right? What's going to happen if you try to get aggressive when you don't have a shield?
Or you can't defend yourself.
You can't defend yourself. So let's say we try to back out. Well, now they just shred us, or we try to go in. They shred us while we're going in. Right? We can kind of see that happening, and we don't have shield, and we get melted instantly. Right? I didn't know that was gonna happen, but I could kind of predict it was gonna happen. Right? Just because when we don't have a shield, we're not able to do anything. So if we tried to get aggressive off of that, we would be able to accomplish nothing. So when we want to get aggressive is when we have resources, not when we have a lack of resources. Right? So what that means is get aggressive when you have your whole shield, not when you're at 0 on it, right? Which has been the time in which we've been trying to get aggressive every time, is we just hold up shield and hold up shield and hold up shield, and then it gets shredded, and then we try to go in when we don't have it, right? Which is the time in which we should not be going in. That's when we should be playing passive, right? So, in that situation, make sure we're not wasting our shield on meaningless spam again, right? Don't just kind of sit there shielding. Get aggressive. Then I'm thinking we might go over some stuff in the training range soon, but we'll wait a moment. Uh-oh, so we get a little bit cut off from our team. Probably go for a counter charge on Reinhardt. Assume you're a veteran of the game, so I'm assuming you know what a counter charge is, right? So that would stop us from taking 300 damage from the Reinhardt, right? And then that would mean that we'd probably still die there, but give us a greater chance of staying alive, stalling out longer, right? Right now we're just being focused by a ton of people, not a whole lot we can do, but counter charging is better than not counter charging here. Hey, Fire Shakes have been looking good so far. Oh, watching for just the hook, right? That's something that we can shield against, right? So when we die, right, we want to just pay attention to why are we dying, right? What is the reason in which we're dying, right? Because we can look to fix said reason, right? Because here we've been dying quite a bit, right? So let's talk on survivability a little bit, because we haven't had great survivability. We've died first round, then we died second, so 3, 4. We died 4 or 5 times here, right? Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is 5 deaths, right, so far, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, wait, maybe 6. Was that 6? Trying to think in my head. So first on point, second when we died in the second fight. Can't remember why we died though. Right, died in oh, that was just from the shatter, I think. Right, when we charged in 13, so that's second. Then third was when we tried to recontest point. Then fourth was when we walked out of spawn to go in. Then fifth was when we got charged by the Reinhardt, and then this was sixth when we died to the Roadhog hook. So we've died 6 times so far, right? And that's not too great of a death rate to have, right? The game has only been going on for 3 minutes and 50 seconds ish, right? Or 3 minutes and 30 seconds, something like that, right? Because we're accounting for time while we were in spawn. So if we were to real quick do some calculations, right? So if right now we're keeping up a death rate of almost 2 deaths a minute, probably a little bit less than 2 deaths a minute, right? Which, this could just be a not so great game, but let's run with it thinking this is a normal, right? So What that means is every single death is 10 seconds of respawn time and 10 seconds of walkback time. So each death is 20 seconds of time, right? So if we died 6 times so far, right, times 20, and then divide that by a minute, we so far been dead for 2 minutes of this game, right? In a game that's only lasted 3 minutes and 30 seconds or 3 minutes and 40 seconds, right? Which means that we've spent more time dead than not dead, right? Which is a pretty insane stats to think about, right? We can keep this going and say, let's say this same death rate keeps up for the entire game, right? We can take like 13 minutes, right, off of the total time. Let's multiply that to maybe minus a couple, just because we'll go on the not. We'll say that you're not dying at 2 minutes, right? Maybe say like 1.5 or something like that, right? So we have 13 times 1.5, right? That's kind of our death rate. So we have 19.5, and then that's times 20, right? And then divided by 60, right? So that would mean that in this entire game, we would be dying around 6 minutes and 20 seconds, right? That would be the time in which we are dead. Which, again, to emphasize, that's a pretty insane stat to think about, right? In 6 minutes, you probably get like 5 shatters, right? That's, again, an insane stat to think about. 5 shatters. Right? You could be doing a ton of things, getting a ton of value, doing a ton of things for your team, but we can't because we're dead, right? And you also have to remember that you dying is not a lack of value. You dying is not you doing nothing. You dying is putting your team in an active disadvantage, right? So you dying is not just not it's not just doing nothing and a lack of stuff. It's you putting your team in an active disadvantage. Therefore, it's a negative, right? Your team is now more likely to lose this fight because they're down the Reinhardt, right? So we want to pay attention to the one now that we've already discussed dying is bad, whoop-de-doo, right? Now let's move on to how do we fix deaths, right? How do we look to stop them? Well, the first thing we have to do to identify how to fix a death is to identify why did we die, right? What was the problem? Right? When you die, the main 4 reasons why you die are going to be a lack of awareness, right? Not paying attention to our environment, poor positioning, being out in the open, not being near cover, not having a high ground, not, using no man's land correctly, right? You also have overaggression, such as pinning into their team. You have misuse of abilities, such as wasting our shield, not using our shield, or pinning into their team, right? So those are the 4 main reasons why somebody could die. So, like, let's just rewind this like 5 seconds and go, well, why do we die to the hog here? Let's see if you can identify that.
Oh yeah, I should have blocked the hook. I think I just missed that it was there.
Yeah, so maybe a little bit of a combination between misuse of abilities and awareness, right? We weren't aware that hog was there, and then therefore we didn't know to block, and we also didn't block using our shield, right? So it was maybe two things there, right? So in this situation, making sure we're paying attention to Roadhog, right? Because he can instant kill us if he lands a hook, so we want to be careful of the hook, right? Because if we're not careful of the hook, then we end up dying, right? So let's see, we respawn. We'll keep going over the deaths like that when they come up. Unfortunate.
Don't worry, my friends. I am your
Heroes never die.
Check me out. You're in the point. Now show them.
I'm looking for a shatter about now. Very nice shatter. Uh-oh. Okay. In this situation, now it's not looking too hot, but we're at a big disadvantage here. But looking to block the sleep, right? Again, paying attention to abilities, because so far we've been shielding for the random spam, but then not shielding for the abilities and ultimates, right? Think hook, think sleep, think when Nano Roadhog was on top of us, right? These are all much more important times to be shielding than when McCree is just shooting at your shield, right? So make sure we're looking and paying attention to Ana here so we don't get slapped. On top of that, Mei starts to freeze us. Make sure we flick around real quick and that just cancels. I think we tried to do that, but it just canceled too late. Again, don't be swinging when you're like 1 HP, right? Look to shield back up in the corner. It's better here that we try to stay alive because we're not, like, look at the top left on their team. Nobody's low. We're probably not going to secure a kill here. So it's better that we just stall out for time so that our teammates can get back than to try to get aggressive and swing on something. Right, and then that situation, right? Some deaths, not much you can do about them, right? Probably say like 20% of deaths. There's not really something you could have fixed there in that last one. Maybe we could have, could have shielded some of the things, but besides that, it was a lost fight anyways, and there's not really much you could have done there.
Your safety ready and primary consent.
Hello. Hey.
Please move behind the barrier. System malfunction. Don't move.
What sensitivity and DPI are you on?
It's 800 DPI. I think the sensitivity is 6 or something. 6,
Okay.
7.
Aim seems a little bit shaky here. That doesn't seem like a super high sensitivity. That's only like a little bit higher than mine. Yet our aim seems like we're shaking a little bit here, right? And like it doesn't seem very smooth with our aiming. So make sure we're just trying to make sure we're paying attention to how we're aiming, right? Aim is only ever shaky if we're being shaky with our aim. So look to keep your arm and your mouse smooth while you're going along. And then that leads to you being able to like see a bit more because you're not shaking, and then also just hitting more consistent shots. Besides that, we might go over, yeah, why don't we go over some stuff here? So we're gonna leave here, go over some stuff. So first off, are you familiar with shield hopping?
That's right, yep.
Yeah, so yes, as Reinhardt. So are you familiar with that or not?
Yeah, it's when you kind of jump and shield and
Okay.
shield as you're jumping. Yeah.
So you understand what it is, but you don't really use it very much. So let's talk about situations in which you would use it. Because the only reason why I would think that somebody doesn't use it, knowing that it exists, is them not understanding what it's used for, right? So let's discuss what is it used for, right? So first off, why you would use it is this gets you in somewhere faster while still shielding, and this also preserves shield health, right? So when we are trying to just slow walk forwards, this is very slow. They have tons of time to shoot at us, tons of time to spam us. Our shield gets melted, right? But when we shield hop in, we're covering that distance faster, which gives them less time to shoot at us, which means that overall we're taking less damage, but then also our shield is taking less damage because it's only up for half of the time. And that means that we rotate that damage between our shield and the people behind us, and because it's only a little bit of damage that's seeping through, it's nothing that's lethal and it can be healed up very easily, right? So that's shield hopping, right? So what are the situations in which you should be shield hopping? You should be shield hopping anytime you are trying to close a gap, or so anytime you're trying to get aggressive or back out and disengage really, really fast, right? Because we don't want to hard shield because then it's going to be really slow. And you want to look to shield hop so we can preserve our shield while we're pushing. So if we're trying to push into their team, we would be shield hopping in and then going aggressive, right? So that way we have our shield for when we're actually needing to back up. And then let's say we shield hopped in and now they just popped like 3 ultimates. Well, now we might want to back up a little bit, right? Back up a little fast, right? And then we would shield hop backwards. Now if we're, of course, low or our teammates need it, then we would hard shield, right? But in the situation where there's no one needs it, right, and we're not about to block an ultimate or an ability and no one's low, then we would just shield hop, right? So we're taking less damage on our shield and covering the distance faster, right? Now, besides that, swinging your hammer, right? When we look at the thing we're swinging on, right, we hit one person and that's it. When we swing our hammer, right, we can hit, oh, he died. When we swing our hammer, we can be hitting multiple people at the same time, right? Very easily for free, right? Whereas I don't really see a ton of swinging of the hammer, right? So when you are swinging your hammer, are just very easy way to do this is just go with the way your hammer's swinging, right? So when it goes left, you go left, goes right, you swing your camera right. So left, right, right, and you can even do this like the reason why this is so powerful is that you can even do this up to a like complete 180, right? Where you're hitting these people even though they're in the complete opposite directions, right? And we're still getting value out of swinging on both of them. So recommend that one as well. Now, that is about it on Reinhardt. Moving over to what was the other Orisa, right? So
Your safety
now
is
let's
my primary
discuss crosshair
concern.
placement. Are you familiar with what crosshair placement is?
Please stand back.
Where you put your crosshair?
Yeah, so crosshair placement, yeah, like you said, where you put your crosshair, but more specifically, it's placing your crosshair in the best place possible to lead to the easiest shots, right? So when you place your crosshair in good spots, it leads to you being able to do things very easily. So what that looks like is the first big basic step to crosshair placement is aiming at head level, right? Now Reinhardt, you don't want to do this because the Reinhardt you can't hit headshots, but Orisa you can. When you hit headshots on Orisa, you're doing literally two times the amount of damage, right? Which is what you want to be doing. You want to be doing 2 times damage. So when we're walking around in our game, we're walking around aiming like this, right? Which means we come up against somebody, right? We start shooting down a corridor, into shields, into people randomly, right? We're hitting body shots. But if we
I
were
am
to
programmed
place
to
across
avoid
our head
violence.
level, now all
However,
these shots
I have
naturally
made an
become
exception.
headshots. When we're shooting down a corridor, shooting into shields, just shooting at people normally, right? All these shots just naturally become headshots because we're aiming at that level, right? Whereas we were just kind of walking around looking down. Now again, on Reinhardt, it doesn't matter as much unless we're like looking into the floor, but on Orisa, we want to look on any character that can headshot. We look up.
Vital
Okay?
signs negative.
Here as well, there's another step to this is aiming where we know people are going to be, right? So if we know bot is top right, we're going to pre-aim at head level top right. So when the bot comes around the corner, right, this is very easy headshots because we already know he's going to be there, right? So these was very, very easy because we were already aiming. That's pre-aiming, right? So here we know he's on the left, so we're going to pre-aim head level, left side. When we turn the corner, we're already aiming at his head. And these guys are on a slope, so the same way we look down on a tank, or on a torb, and up on a tank. And we're going to look down on these guys, so when we come around the corner, we're already looking at the head, right? So that's
Okay.
crosshair placement, making sure we're doing that.
And with the shakiness, I thought it was kind of good with Orisa to
Welcome.
aim like left and right of where they are, so that
No,
at least some of your shots aim.
No, it doesn't really. If anything, I'd say you're missing more shots then because you're just going off of the target, right? Like if you're on the target, right, you're hitting all. I think like you're hitting all of your shots, right? If your crosshair's on top of the person, you're hitting every shot, right? If you already have perfect tracking on Orisa, right, you would hit every single shot. If you have perfect tracking on Orisa, but you're going left to right of the target, well, now you're just missing shots because shots are going past them, right? So it's essentially as if you're 80 strafing for them by aiming like that. Like, oh, did we die? I think we died. Yeah. So we're like right here ish. All right. So just look at our crosshair, right, on Reinhardt. Look at our crosshair on May. We look up a little bit, and then we're gonna look back down here, right? Look at it on May. We look at the Torb or on the Zenyatta. Now it's a little bit downwards, but look how we're still aiming at the floor there. I think we try to place the shield. Make sure we're reloading when there's nothing to do, right? When you have a lull in time, so we're not coming in with 56
I
ammo.
recommend moving behind my barrier. The objective
Okay,
is
pull off a
now
cooldown, just
ours.
same way on. I think we were doing it on Fire Strike really well. We were Fire Striking every single time we got it, right? You do the same thing with pull, and you do almost same thing with shield, though not the exact same thing. But pull you use anytime you get it, right? So that we can have it out there doing things as often as possible.
For your safety, please move behind the barrier.
Okay, more body shots. We get a kill. Okay, why we die there? What do you think the reason was?
I think I thought I had the shield up when I was trying to place it.
So we thought we had the shield up, but we didn't.
And I was getting, I wasn't sure like whether I was supposed to be going left or right because I wasn't sure how pushed up they were in the left-hand side.
Yeah. So why don't we walk through the 4 checkboxes? Do you think this was a misuse of abilities?
Well, I think in this case I didn't have the ability, so I probably shouldn't have been in that far in the open, I suppose.
Yeah. So then I think you just hit the nail on the head there is look at our positioning, right? This is a lack of cover, therefore this is bad positioning, right? Good positioning, usage of cover, bad positioning, absence of cover, right? So here, right, us being here is much worse than us being here, right? And the same thing if somebody's on the left side, you might want to go and do something like this, where now left side can't see me because I'm around cover, right? Or if I wanted to back up a little bit, now nobody can see me, right? But instead we're pushing out in the open when we don't have shield, when we were down HP already, right? Which means that we end up dying, right? So we want to make sure we're using cover, and then that leads to us not dying. Right, so right now our death rate is, we had 6, 7, is it 8? Question mark, something like that. Which now the death rate is more so like a little over 1 a minute, which isn't as bad, but I think that's,
Safety,
that's, which is better.
lethality level increased.
Let's get you healed up. Oh. Time to accelerate.
Error detected. Not budging.
Don't combo with your fortify and your shield at the same time, because then fortify does nothing, right? Your fortify negates damage and negates crowd control and boops and stuns and stuff like that, right? Fortify doesn't do anything if you're not being shot at or stunned, right? So therefore, you just wasted an ability because we used both our abilities at the same time. So use one or the other, don't use both. On top of that, might want to say again, be a little bit closer to cover here. Maybe hug left side a little bit closer, because we're out in the open a little bit here. Or quite a bit. Again, pulling off cooldown, just be pulling in there, right? Pull does multiple things for you. Pull groups them up, makes it easier for you to shoot at them, but then also teammates to shoot at them. This can pull them around the corner, make it, again, easier for you to shoot at them when they're not expecting it. This can set up hog hooks. If hog's looking for a hook, right, you can pull, and then now hog can hook for free into your pull, right? Pulling as well, just, the big thing is it just makes for easy kills and it displaces people, right? So we want to be using it just as often as possible because there's no reason to hold on to the ability, right? So just use it more often.
And you want to suck it above their head, sort of thing. Is that the
Yeah.
best use of it?
It doesn't have as much of a range as it did before, which really messes me up when I play Orisa now, because I don't typically play Orisa, but I did back when Orisa was like really nuts. Right, I played Orisa a little bit. And you did want to suck above their heads back then because that would pull them up in the air and stuff like that. Now it has less of a range, so you want to be very careful when you're pulling them up above them, because it can very easily end up just going too high above them. So you do it a tiny little bit above their heads, but not too far above them, because then that just makes it so that it's further away from everybody. So yes, but be very careful when you're doing that you're not going too far above their heads, because you want them to be dropping from the air, because that leads to a longer duration of them not having control over their movement. So yeah, that's how it goes.
Into the iris.
Alright, so they're, for some reason, they're all out in the open here, but I probably say this wasn't a very good bongo. So when you have bongos, right, you have aggressive bongos and defensive bongos. Defensive bongos is when you're holding a position and you're planning on not moving at all. An aggressive bongo is when you plan on getting aggressive and pushing in. So an aggressive bongo should be placed to have sight lines on you and your team, and should be able to have sight lines on the place in which you're going. Right? A defensive bongo should be around the corner so that it's safe from people. So for example, if we had been on the defensive side and where their team was, we would place bongo around this corner because we don't plan on moving anywhere. So our whole team can get the value out of it, yet it's around the corner and they can't see it. But if we're pushing an aggressive with this bongo is out of range of like our entire team, right? And it's also, if we push forwards, which we're probably going to have to push forwards, because all they had to do there to not let you shoot them is just use cover, which people are going to use a lot more at higher ranks. But here in the situation, if this is, you being up in platinum, right, they might have a little bit more, they might understand the game a little bit better, and they might just go boop, now Bongo can't see me, right? Or boop, now Bongo can't see me, and then therefore your Bongo doesn't do anything, right? So here in the situation, we place Bongo way too far back, and we also place it on this little ramp where it cuts off line of sight to us, and about to be a Roadhog in a second, so no one ends up actually getting Bongo, right? And it gets wasted for a large portion of the time, right? And it just does nothing for that entire duration. And then before that, it only had like one person in it, right? So much better Bongo usage would be to use it when we're closer to the fight, right? Maybe even Bongoing somewhere like around here might be better, right? Making sure it has line of sight on more teammates, etc. Okay, out in the open, we have both of our abilities. We have Fortify and we have our Shield, which means that we would be able to stop the Shatter with multiple different things. We can Shield in front of Reinhardt, we can Fortify, and then probably Shield would be best because that would stop our team from getting shattered, right? It would stop 3 people from getting shattered, and then Fortify would be second best, right? And then that stops them from being able to pull a fast one on you guys. Once again, noting that we haven't used pull at all here. Sends it a little farther. Hey, I guess Arena die? No, we didn't? Okay, a little bit out in the open there. Little far push forwards, right? Again, you want to put some distance in between yourselves. You're on a much spammier distance-based composition than they are, so you might want to be a little bit further back, right, from them, not holding so close, and then therefore we're able to not die, and we're also not really protecting very much from where we were at. Make sure when we're backing up, that we're backing up to where our team is, right? Our team isn't really behind us over here, which actually we only have, I guess our team's not anywhere at the moment. Does Mercy... so I guess we're fine there. I thought more of our team was on the left side.
Heroes never die. For your safety, please move behind the barrier.
You can still be shooting while you're pulling. That's something you can do.
Thank you kindly.
Please move behind the barrier.
Okay, fortifying when there's not really a ton of damage coming in, right? You weren't really in danger, so it's kind of wasted fortifying. Notice that our entire team is on the left and we're on the right, so who are we protecting as the main tank, right? Who are we shielding for? Are we tanking for anything, right? Whereas if we're over here, well, now the answer is yes, right? Over here, the answer is no. We're protecting ourselves, and that's it. So make sure with our team, right? Backing up with our team, staying with them. Okay, seem to be throwing our pull a little bit too far sometimes here. Make sure we're pulling a little bit sooner, or we're canceling a little bit sooner, right? Here, was this a defensive or aggressive bongo? Are we
Defensive.
offensive? We're pushing in with this bongo. You want to get
Defensive.
aggressive?
Defensive.
Oh, defensive. Sorry, I misheard you there. So yeah, you're correct, right? We probably want to be defensive with this bongo because they're pushing into us. So therefore, bongo should probably just go around this wall here, right? Over here, right? Here, they can just break it or push past it and kill it super easily. Around the wall, they can't really do anything, right? So here, we just place it a little too out in the open. And then therefore, look, oh, it's 1 HP. Look how fast they melt it, right? Just that easily. Okay, so we had a lot less deaths here on the second round.
I'm taking point.
which means obviously we're winning it, and as we've seen, because we didn't die nearly as often.
Into the iris.
Heroes never die. Behind the back.
Step right. You aim.
Okay, now we're just kind of cleaning them up. Use some pulls, make them easier to kill for your team. A lot of our pulls have just been like, pull is going to get more value out of keeping Genji, who's jumping around in circles, in place than it is just pulling Reinhardt back like 2 inches while he's shielding, right? Because the first one lets your team shoot at Genji for free, who is a very hard target to hit, whereas the second one does what, like, saves you guys a half a second from Reinhardt pushing in, right?
That makes sense.
Right, that was a good pull, good one, right? Because that, like you see, pretty much secured the kill on Lucio, who's a hard target to kill. You pull him off the wall, make him very easy to kill, and he died within like half a second. All right, so we're going to exit out here. We're going to now go over the main points of the session, do a quick review along with that, and then wrap up from there. So, let's start on Reinhardt here, right? Ability usage. Fire Strike's pretty good, right? We're pretty much the only thing we use it off cooldown. Just maybe like landing a couple. Oh, excuse me. Maybe just landing a couple more, right? And then charging and shield were the ones that actually needed the work. Fire Strike was good. Charging, make sure we're not going for long distance charges, right? We don't want to go from here to there, because then that means that we end up just dying, because they have a ton of time to shoot at us, a ton of time to stun us. But when we charge from this distance, well, now we get out of the animation pretty much instantly, right? Which means that we are not in as much danger. Make sure we're not charging into the middle of their team, because we don't want to be putting ourselves in the middle of their team in most situations, right? Aside from a couple, right? So don't charge into the middle of their team. Charge out of spawns. You get to the fight sooner, unless of course like you're charging in by yourself into a fight that's already lost, right? And then look for a wall dependent that's closer, right? That sort of idea. Besides that, the shield was probably the biggest thing out of your whole kit that needed to work. Oh, also counter-charging too, right? Look to counter-charge on the enemy Reinhardt if you think you're about to die from it. Shield management, right? Make sure that we are looking to, think about the shield type. Things are reason. Sorry, words. Think about the reasons why you use your shield, right? You use shield to when you are low, when your teammates are low, when you are blocking abilities and ultimates, when you're pushing forwards and getting aggressive and backing out and getting passive, and when you're blocking an insane amount of damage. You do not use shield when you're just soaking up random spam damage. Think back to that list and think, what did we, like on that list, there were a couple of things that we didn't actually ever block. Like we didn't block abilities and ultimates very often. We didn't block when we were pushing in aggressively and backing out. We weren't shield hopping, right? So shield hop when you get in aggressive and back out, and you're backing out fast, right? So we didn't block for like 4 of the things out of the 7 things that I mentioned, right? So make sure we're looking to block abilities and ultimates more, and looking to shield hop when we're pushing in aggressively. Don't just randomly shield when it's not needed. Make sure looking to preserve our shield so that we actually have it when we're pushing in. Push in when you have shield. Don't push in when you don't have it, right? Same thing with health. Overall, probably ability usage. Oh, and then sorry, over to other character. Now we have Orisa, right? Orisa, pull more often, right? Make sure we're not using shield and fortify at the same time. Shield placement is usually pretty good. And then fortify, make sure that we are using it when we actually need it, that we're not just wasting it, right? Don't use it when we have a shield down. Don't use it when nobody's shooting at you. Don't use it when you're not being stunned or whatever, right? So shield good, pull, use it more often, and then fortify, make sure you're using in better situations. Overall, on Reinhardt, I'd probably say ability usage goes to, trying to think, because these two are, I think Orisa didn't need as much work with abilities. Probably say on Reinhardt, ability usage went to like a medium, maybe like a medium high, kind of in between that of a priority for you to work on. And then Orisa was more so like a low to medium to a medium. It was kind of they were both in the in-between area. I don't want to put them right next to each other because they were, I think Reinhardt definitely needed more work on it. Moving on, ultimate usage, right, on Reinhardt. Honestly, pretty good. We landed big fat shatters. We just didn't capitalize them a couple times, right? Make sure we're not suiciding after we land the shatter. I'd probably say after we landed a shatter, we're like we died two times after we landed it, right? So make sure we're looking to stay alive. Don't suicide into it. Don't charge into the middle of their team if you don't have teammates to back you up. Orisa, Bongo, right? You have a aggressive versus passive, or offensive versus defensive bongos. Offensive, make sure your team can see it. Make sure, like if we know we're pushing in with this and we're gonna go around the corner, don't place it here when you're just gonna go around the corner and not have it anymore, right? Instead, wait till you get around that corner. If you're using it defensively, place it around the wall. Overall, probably say that the ultimate usage goes to like a low to medium priority, nothing like too major, right? Moving on, mechanics. Reinhardt doesn't have mechanics. Orisa, make sure keeping good crosshair placement and not doing shaky aim, right? And then that was pretty much reloading, right? Make sure we're reloading when we have time, right? When there's just nothing else to do. Then overall, that goes to low to medium priority on Orisa, non-existent on Reinhardt. Positioning, make sure we are not positioning on the open. Good positioning is usage of cover. Bad positioning is the absence of cover. No man's land and choke points, hold at the end of them, not the front or the middle. And then that's pretty much it. We end up dying a lot because we're out in the open. So, and then also just holding corners with both on Orisa and Reinhardt, so we can place shields in it. It means that half the shield isn't even taking damage, and it encourages your team to stay behind the corner, right? Overall positioning probably goes up to more so like a medium high-ish range, right? And then moving on to your awareness. Awareness / aggression is where we'll put this at, right? Make sure you're paying attention to our health bar, to our abilities and our shield health, right? Make sure we are paying attention to where's the enemy team, where's our team at, right? So we just know what is up with people, who's doing what, so we're not charging in when we don't have teammates to back us up. Make sure we're just paying attention to the general flow of the fight, paying attention to who's alive, who's dead, being aware, audio awareness, paying attention to the Ana who's behind us, like when we're in Reinhardt first point. And then that's pretty much it. Overall awareness probably say goes to like a medium priority. I don't think it was like biggest thing, but also needed work, right? And then aggression, I forgot to put that in there. Aggression, make sure we're getting aggressive when we have abilities, when we have things to back us up, when we have advantages, and when we don't have things, telling us we shouldn't be getting aggressive. And then playing passive when it's the opposite, right? When we don't have abilities, when we don't have resources, when we don't have advantages, right? This is when we play passive. And then overall, still probably like a medium priority. Then finally, survivability, right? Survivability, making sure that we're not dying, right? Looking to stop the reason why we're dying, right? So making sure that we are looking to, thinking about the reasons why we're dying, right? So 4 reasons were ability usage, right? Misuse of abilities, over-aggression, the other one would be poor positioning, and then a lack of awareness, right? Those would be the 4. Making sure we're paying attention to those and looking to stay alive. As we didn't have a great death rate in our game, right? Especially on Reinhardt. Orisa we did a bit better, but especially on our Reinhardt we didn't have a great death rate. And then overall, probably say that one goes to like a medium high priority. Alright, so let's put that in order real quick. Number 1, probably would be survivability. Number 2, positioning. Number 3, probably say goes to ability usage on Reinhardt. We'll just say ability use. Yeah, let's just say ability usage in general. Just make it easy on you, right? Ability usage. 4 would be awareness. 5 would be your ultimate usage, and then 6 would be mechanics. Okay. Any questions about anything we've talked about, or just anything else in general?
The defensive bongo you use, like when you know the enemy's pushing in, right, or they've used their abilities and you can see them coming. But with the offensive one, Would that normally be like the first ultimate you use, like to open an engagement, or is it?
It can be, right? A lot of times you want to use ultimates to start, but it can be first, can be second. It doesn't necessarily matter. Like if you typically want to use it before the enemy team uses their ults. That's the main point, because ults that are used first typically get more value than ults that are used second. But you also don't want to use it too early to where the fight hasn't begun and they can just run away. So for example, if we're talking about like this, right? Enemy team, our team, we're pushing in. We wouldn't want to pop it back here because this is just going to be way too far away from the fight, right? They just run around the corner super easily and we can't do anything to run up to them. So instead we would push forwards, get aggressive. Whoops, little bit of a shield. Then we would look to be around here and then we would probably sit here for a little bit, make sure we have our shield, make sure we have our resources. Then we would probably do something like this, right, and get aggressive like that, right? So
Okay.
we're placing shield before bongoing, placing bongo in an area where everybody can see us and help us, and we're getting aggressive off of it. If we placed it, placing it back here also wouldn't be too bad of an idea. This just guarantees we can go around the corner with it, but something along those lines. Okay. Any other questions?
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
Good.
So let me